Inside the stories that affect you. This is Inside KELOLAND.
Good evening, I'm Angela Kennecke. Thank you for joining us for this week's Inside KELOLAND. Over the next half hour, we'll be talking with the South Dakota Education Association about the upcoming school year as the districts release their reopening plans to keep teachers, staff, and students safe amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, it is that time of year to buy some sweet treats while helping kids who are in the hospital. How you can participate in this year's South Dakota Sweet Miracles Day coming up. When the COVID-19 pandemic first hit, schools across the country and here in KELOLAND closed, with many students and teachers relying on distance learning to finish up the school year. Now, districts are starting to put together back-to-school plans. Under the Sioux Falls School District's Return to Learn plan, students will go back to school on August 27th. Staff are highly encouraged to wear face coverings. Some will be required to wear PPE. Students are also encouraged to wear face masks and social distance. Superintendent Jane Stabum says the plan will have to evolve throughout the year.
We are a public entity. We serve the public, we serve children, and we want to make sure that children can access a free and appropriate public education.
KELOLAND's Dan Santella also spoke with teachers and the school board about whether masks should be required.
Signs and teachers outside the district's instructional planning center on Monday echoed support for wearing masks.
If we're going to go back to school, we need to wear masks just for the safety of our community.
I believe firmly that masks need to be mandated.
I personally believe that masks should be mandated for students and teachers in order to keep everybody safe.
Inside at the school board meeting, the message continued.
Tonight, you have to ask yourselves, do masks decrease the risk of spreading COVID-19? And if your answer is yes, you must mandate masks. I wonder if as a district, we are ready and prepared to bury our own.
If each individual has value, you are responsible for protecting everyone who steps into our building. And by requiring masks, that protection is in place.
It is in the spirit of family that I share my concerns and objections to recommended mask wearing, and I urge you to make it mandatory for all staff and students in the district.
The school board weighed in too.
What do you do with the person that's gonna say, no, there's no way I'm gonna wear a mask? I don't know how we get through that. A week ago, I would have said, for sure, I want this mandated, and it needs to be done for the safety of everybody. But then I just don't get how we're going to be able to. Because mandated means you do it, or there's going to be some ramifications. And what are those ramifications?
I hope we can find a solution on how you discipline someone for not wearing a mask. I don't think that's what we're after here at all. I think what we're looking for is trying to protect our students and our staff as much as possible.
Cleveland Elementary teacher Carrie Anderson had raised the issue of punishment too.
I don't think that it needs to be something that is punitive. If they don't wear a mask, it needs to be a conversation with the family. It doesn't need to be something where the kid isn't wearing a mask and we immediately go to an office referral or a disciplinary action of some sort. That is not going to solve the problem. It needs to be a community-based approach.
I just really hope that people can realize that this is in no way a political statement. This is in no way a political decision. As a nurse, I can tell you this is a public health decision, and that's what we're here for.
Well, that was Dan Santella reporting. When it comes to the Mitchell School District, masks will be mandatory for all people on the property. The district's policy is that masks will be mandatory until the end of the pandemic. It is the parents' responsibility to give their child a mask, but if the student forgets, the school will have a mask for them. Now, there are some exceptions to this mandate. Joining us now via Zoom is Dana Livermont from the South Dakota Education Association, which represents more than 5,000 education professionals in the state. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dana. Well, in just a few weeks, kids and those teachers will be back in the classroom, and it looks like, numbers are in South Dakota, they've sort of, been going down or maintained the same. In other states, they're higher. It's so hard to know what the right thing, I think, for districts to do. What recommendations are you giving school districts to make sure everyone stays as safe as possible?
Well, the first thing that I'd like to share is that educators in the state want nothing more than for us to be able to return to school, because we know that our best learning happens in schools and our best teaching happens in school. But we want to make sure that we do it safely, and not just for educators, but also for our students and for our families and for the community as a whole. So we really feel strongly that plans need to be made individually with each district, and we should be including all the stakeholders in determining those plans. So, including family voice in that. And we really applaud some of the school districts who have reached out to families and surveyed them to, ask, what are your concerns? Where do you feel the safety needs are? They also need to have educators at the table when those decisions are being made. They're in the most vulnerable positions in our schools. And when we talk about educators, we're not just talking about classroom teachers, although they're a huge, important piece of this, but we need to have our clerical staff and our secretaries at the table talking about how are we going to interface with the public in our schools. Sometimes they're the first ones to interact with families. So what does safety look like for them? We need to be talking to our custodians. They're the ones who are going to have to help keep our schools clean and sanitized. What materials do they need? What do they need for time and capacity? And I think we also need to be bringing our school counselors to the table to talk about this and to help us develop plans, because when we talk about school, it's not just about the academic needs of our students, but it's also the social emotional needs of our students. And not being in school for most of the spring semester has been really hard on our students, and they've not been able to connect with their peers as much as they normally would. And then also just the uncertainty of it could have created a lot of anxiety. So it's really important to bring all those stakeholders together to develop plans to make sure it's the right plan for your school and your community.
Well, we saw these Sioux Falls educators outside of the Instructional Planning Center, asking that masks be mandatory. When it comes to educators or office staff or custodial staff or any of the adults working in our schools, you have people with underlying health conditions. You have older people approaching retirement, and people at greatest risk for COVID-19. And we don't know that much about how it works in children yet. I mean, I've read reports all over the place that it can, have these horrible syndromes in children, or it can hardly affect them at all, COVID-19. So I think you have such a diverse population within our schools that it's so hard, to, first of all, maybe enforce children wearing masks. I could see that being a very difficult thing, but then also protecting some of our most vulnerable educators.
Yeah, and look, the CDC is recommending that we do wear masks to slow the spread of the virus, and we urge schools to follow CDC guidelines, because all of our decisions should be rooted in science and facts, and we need to try to avoid, getting involved in the political rhetoric and really look at what do we know and what are the science and facts around that. And like you said, there's a lot that we don't know as far as the spread in children, but what we do know is that wearing masks can greatly reduce the spread of the virus. So we are encouraging schools to follow those CDC recommendations.
I have another question regarding learning. Teachers and students were just plunged suddenly into online learning with very little preparation for that. Teachers have had a chance to experience that. I'm sure they've had a chance over the summer to do some continuing education on online distance learning. It sounds to me like schools could go back and forth. Like if we see a spike in COVID-19, they could shut down for a while. I mean, there could be a period where kids are sent home for a while to do distance learning again. Do you think our educators are better prepared for that now, having experienced that in the spring, should it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if, most South Dakotans can reflect on their own careers, and if they had to, change the way they were doing things in a matter of days, it can be really anxiety inducing and really difficult. But our educators really rose to that occasion in the spring, but it was difficult. We had to relearn the way that we talked about different curriculum and the skills we used and the way that we met with students. And I think having that time over the summer, a lot of teachers and different educators are taking continuing education courses to expand their knowledge about how to use technology. And I think just having that experience in the spring is going to prepare them for the fall, should we have to cancel school at all. And I think another point to make there is that I think the closures in the spring really highlighted how important it is for us to have connections with our families and be engaging them in the learning process, because we really had to rely on them in the spring. And I think going into the fall, it's going to be crucial that we're building those relationships and starting off with communication, so that way, if we do have to bring learning back to the home, that we already have those connections established.
I just have one other quick question. How do you get kids to wear masks?
That's a great question. And of course, it is harder the younger you get. And you can imagine a room of 25 kindergartners and trying to keep masks on. But I think, modeling is a great way to start as adults, showing them that this is how we do it, gentle reminders, and talking through it and explaining it. I have a niece who's 4 years old, and she wears a mask when we go into public places, and we've talked about it, and she understands that there are germs, we call them germs, but a virus. And I think kids can understand it if we talk to them about it. And I think just by great modeling.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us so much for the program today, and I wish all the teachers the best of luck as schools reopen. Now, we also reached out to the South Dakota Department of Education for an interview. They directed us to the department's Starting Well 2020 plan. The document goes over step-by-step guidelines to help school districts decide the safest way to reopen. It answers questions like, can a district physically open school buildings for students and staff? Will districts need to plan for flex delivery methods? And what mitigation steps are appropriate to take to reopen schools? The Education Department has also provided a checklist for school districts when putting together their back-to-school plans. The Department of Education says both they and the Department of Health will continue to work with districts as school leaders face the challenges of reopening their buildings while also keeping kids and staff safe. If you'd like to read the Starting Well 2020 plan from the Department of Education, we have provided a link under this story on KELOLAND.com. Still to come inside KELOLAND, you can support Children's Miracle Network with a sweet treat. That is later this month. We'll tell you about it after the break. Welcome back to Inside KELOLAND. Each year, Dairy Queen and the Children's Miracle Network partner up for Miracle Treat Day to raise money for families who have children in the hospital. This year, South Dakota is putting on its own Sweet Miracles Day. Joining us now is Bethany Olson, the Development Officer with Sanford Health Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us, Bethany. Tell me a little bit about this event. What can people expect this year and how it came about?
So Miracle Treat Day across the country was canceled, but our operators in the state of South Dakota said we still need to step up for our kids. They still need us. So we have a much more socially distance friendly and sort of online version this year to celebrate the sweetest day of the year. So we are encouraging pre-orders online and also encouraging DQ fans to get their Blizzard coupons online early as well, just so that we are not having the crazy lines we see on a normal year.
The Madison Dairy Queen has always been like top in the country every single year. It's been so well received around here. Are you expecting people to still go out and get the Blizzards this year?
Yes, so DeLon in Madison is also doing his best to keep things as socially distanced as he can, and he is encouraging his normal customers to just order the Blizzard coupons rather than waiting in line for their Blizzard that day. So he actually set up a Blizzard coupon shed in his parking lot this week. It's open for the first time, so people can go and pick up their Blizzard coupons. And then he will also have that available on July 30th, as well as his drive-through. And they're also working on some other options. His dining room will be closed just to keep things safe, but he's doing the best he can to make a big splash.
That's fantastic. How important is this fundraiser for the Children's Miracle Network?
It is one of our favorite events of the year, not only just for our families to get out and interact with our supporters, but also for the community. Everyone really loves this day, and it raises a ton of money for Sanford Children's Miracle Network. Last year, it raised about $175,000 just through the sale of Blizzard coupons and Blizzards. So $1 from every one sold comes back to support our patients and their families, which it's probably the only place that you can say you're supporting a local business owner, you're getting ice cream, and you're also supporting local kids.
It's a win-win for everyone involved, right?
It really is.
I've worked with the Children's Miracle Network and in raising money for the Children's Miracle Network for 22 years now. And I've done so many stories with the families and how they're helped through the Children's Miracle Network, how the money stays local. How has the pandemic affected families this year?
We have seen a lot more families, of course, staying at home and not getting out and doing the things they normally would. And we also, with our families that are inpatient with their kiddo, for a long time, only one parent could be in the room with them throughout the day. And normally it would have been mom, dad, brother, sister, whoever, but it was limited to just one to keep the number of people within the hospital down. And that has been lifted up to, I believe it's 2 now. And with that, we've also had to extend a little bit more of our direct child and family assistance to families so that they can go down and get meal vouchers and not have to worry about going into the restaurants and worrying about what germs they've been exposed to before coming to visit their high-risk child. So we've been able to, because of donor support, extend additional funding to those families to support them through this.
This has been a tough year for all nonprofits. What else do you have planned to try to raise funds this year for the Children's Miracle Network?
Right now, we have Walmart actually doing a roundup campaign for us. We have the KELOLAND special coming up in August as well. Ace Hardware is doing a roundup campaign. Love's is also doing a roundup campaign. A lot of roundup campaigns, especially through this change shortage that we're facing. A lot of our partners are stepping up and saying, we'll support our sick and injured kids at Sanford, and also we'll get some change back in our stores. So,
well, give us the details again about the South Dakota Sweet Miracles Day.
Yes, so you can order online. Just text the word miracles to 51555 for a link to order. And that link is up and running through July 26th. And then your blizzards will be ready for pickup on July 30th.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, the next month, we'll introduce you to the families that your donations are helping. You can watch our Children's Miracle Network special on Tuesday, August 11th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, right here on KELO TV. During the special, you can continue to donate to CMN by texting KELO to 51555. Coming up after the break, what role South Dakota's 3 major health systems are playing to research COVID-19. You're watching Inside KELOLAND. Last month, a statewide hydroxychloroquine clinical trial brought together researchers from Sanford, Avera, and Monument Health Systems. While that trial has been discontinued, all 3 health systems are still working on other important research related to COVID-19. KELOLAND's Bridget Bennett explores some of their current projects and what they've learned about the disease so far.
All over the world, there are countless healthcare systems researching the coronavirus and COVID-19.
We really don't know a lot about this disease. Every day and every week we're learning more, but there's so much we don't know.
It's a common theme you'll hear from the people studying the illness at the heart of the global pandemic.
This continues to be very evolving. This virus is humbling, to say the least, because we're learning as we go.
Whether you ask Avera, Monument, or Sanford Health,
I think there's always more to learn.
All of South Dakota's major health systems are continuing work to research the many questions still unanswered about this virus.
The only tool that we have to get the answers that we need are clinical research trials.
While the statewide hydroxychloroquine trials ended with a different answer than expected, the health systems say they still learned some important information.
Research is literally just a scientific process of learning. And sometimes we're going to learn things work great, and sometimes we're going to learn things don't work as well as we'd hoped.
Another area of research the state's health systems are working on is showing a more positive answer to help battle COVID-19.
From a research standpoint, we continue to be heavily involved as we were early on with convalescent plasma, where we take the antibodies from people, of course, that have previously had the condition, and we're able to transfuse them to those needing it.
Through this trial, South Dakota's healthcare professionals are learning more about the safety of convalescent plasma treatments and the most effective timing for transfusions. Information gained thanks to the growing number of willing participants.
We've got 75 participants in that program out of the approximately 165 patients that we've treated for COVID that have been hospitalized.
Roger DeRod, the lead researcher at Monument Health, says South Dakota's smaller population makes it an ideal location to run these clinical trials.
We are approached very often for prestigious trials that many sites are trying to participate in because we have a rural and Native American population, and we're anxious that those populations be included in the data.
Sanford Health's Jeremy Cowles agrees the state's smaller population will continue to draw more important COVID-related research to the state, especially when vaccination trials are ready to begin.
I think it'll make us more attractive to those companies who are trying to find a population of people who haven't had COVID, because it'll be a lot easier to find them here than it will be in a place like New York. We'd like to find 30,000 South Dakotans who are interested in the trial.
While the health systems await an opportunity to start vaccination trials, they're all busy working to answer other research questions related to the virus.
The risk of the COVID-19 during pregnancy is higher, so we're following those mothers, whether they require hospitalizations, whether they have complications.
Avera Chief Medical Officer Kevin Post says Avera's OBGYNs are studying the virus in pregnant women to help understand how to provide better treatment and care down the road.
We are still well in this pandemic with probably many more months to go. So what can we learn from that to better apply to our obstetrical patients as we move through this?
PPE has been enormously effective in preventing people from getting the illness, but at the same time, we'd like to know numbers on that. We'd like to know how good.
Sanford Health is beginning a new antibody surveillance trial, testing the asymptomatic spread of the virus among its own frontline workers.
It'll tell us a lot more about how the disease spreads, the rate that we can expect it to spread, and also a lot more about how to keep our people healthy.
We have a lot of arterial and venous thrombotic events. The arterial events can be strokes, heart attacks.
Monument Health is starting a new randomized trial next week, investigating the higher rate of blood clots and strokes among COVID-19 patients in the ICU. The Rapid City Hospital is also conducting trials to learn the effectiveness of a new medication for treating the sickest COVID-19 patients.
If you are diagnosed with COVID, clinical research trials are the sword that you fight back against. Randomized clinical trials are the only kind of trials that give us a definitive answer that we can hang our hat on and use to treat future patients.
Continued research to find those solid answers to help lead us through this pandemic. With Eye on KELOLAND, I'm Bridget Bennett.
The research going on now isn't solely centered on the coronavirus, but also the other health impacts this pandemic may have. Avera Health is conducting a long-term study on what the social changes like decreased activity and increased screen time during the pandemic will mean for childhood obesity rates and other health factors in children. Stay with us. Inside KELOLAND is right back after this. That's all the time we have for this week's Inside KELOLAND. You can find out more about today's topics online at KELOLAND.com. Join us every Sunday following the 10 o'clock news right here on KELO TV for more on what's going on inside KELOLAND. Have a great night, everyone.